Hello, my friends. I'm Dr. Steve Nugent, and today we're going to talk about Manitech's Osolean product, a product specifically designed to help get that pesky fat right off of you. Well, we're going to start with a little bit of background about dieting in general, and then get to some of the specifics of why Osolean is so unique and so effective. There are all manner of theories out there, and of course, new diets are being invented all the time. Generally speaking, they're all gimmicks. So to give you a sort of brief history and put things in context for you, because people do often get confused with these ideas, low-calorie dieting started in 1930. In fact, it was two scientists at the University of Nugent in Ann Arbor in the United States that put forth the theory that it was all about calories in and calories out. Now that theory remains a viable one, and especially for a lot of practitioners in different countries around the world today who don't want to go into low fat or low carb or low glycemic or whatever, and they stick right with calories. And the only problem with that is something called insulin resistance. And there are some people who have insulin resistance, and restricting calories is not always effective enough. Sometimes you have to do different things. So that was 1930. In 1948, the low-fat diet idea was first postulated, and these scientists, they said that, well, it was very simple. If you eat fat, you get fat, and if you don't eat fat, well, you won't. It's really not that simple. And in fact, low-fat dieting is simply a different way of counting calories. There's no magic in it at all. It's simply a way of counting calories, because a gram of fat has more calories in it than a gram of protein or a gram of carbohydrate. So it's really a low-cal diet with a little twist. Then in 1972, an American doctor introduced low-carb dieting. These days it's often referred to as the Atkins diet. Well, the low-carb diet had a simple principle. If you consume a food that converts to glucose or blood sugar rapidly, this will make you gain weight. If you don't eat a food that converts rapidly to glucose, that should help you lose weight. And it was an extreme diet. It's still very popular today with variations. And basically it says you simply don't eat foods that contain carbohydrate and you lose weight. That does work for a lot of people. However, that can trigger a metabolic problem, which is known as the thrifty gene. The thrifty gene was first discovered by a scientist in 1962 at Harvard University. His theory was there are certain genetic groups that can eat all the fat they want and never get fat. There are other groups that can eat any amount of carbohydrate and get fat pretty quick. Well, his theory has stood up pretty well since 1962. And what happens with what he called the thrifty gene, that particular gene, if it's triggered, what happens is an individual now has their metabolism slow down. The reason for this is because their body thinks that they're in a state of starvation. And it wants to protect itself by storing the fat, by keeping you or saving the fat, hence the name thrifty, to save, all right? To save the fat so that you won't starve to death, because the purpose of fat is energy. That's it. You need fat as stored energy. Our ancient ancestors had to rely on that in between meals. Unlike today, our ancestors had to work hard for their food, and they didn't always get food when they needed it. So the stored body fat was a way to keep them from starving to death and to keep energy all the time, because when you convert stored body fat, it converts into energy. That's the idea. Well, then in 1979, a new form of dieting was introduced, which has now been called the low glycemic diet. And there's been some variations on that as well. And this was a scientist who is studying people with blood sugar problems. And these people with the blood sugar problems almost universally had more body fat than people who didn't. So he thought, if we avoid foods that cause an insulin response, maybe you could lose body fat. It turns out he was right. The low glycemic diet doesn't sound very sexy, I guess. It doesn't sound very gimmicky. So it hasn't been successful. And even a lot of professionals will say, oh no, that's too complicated. It's really not complicated. It's a healthier variation of low carb dieting, where it encourages vegetables and certain fruits, not all fruits, and it encourages a more balanced diet. It is a little slower, but it is unlikely to trigger your thrifty gene. And then, of course, today, the most popular diet, as I am making this recording for you today, is something called the keto diet. Well, the keto diet is yet another variation on low carb and low glycemic, really. It really is a low carb diet with fat recommended. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but it really does make sense. And in fact, the keto diet is very successful for many people. So the product we're about to talk about, Osolean, is suitable whether you're doing low cal, low fat, low carb, low glycemic, or keto, or any diet. It is a suitable product to use for any of those. So not to worry. How do we know that we can be confident with Osolean? Well, we know because of two scientific studies. First, a double-blind, placebo-controlled human clinical study. And by the way, the double-blind, placebo-controlled human study is the gold standard. That's as high as it gets. That's as good as it gets. So with that in mind, we know from the data, and I'll give you some of that data in a few moments, that Osolean is an effective product for most individuals using it. Then there was a large-scale 8-week open-label human study. With an open label, people know what they're taking, and that's hence the name. Whereas in a double-blind, nobody, including the researchers, know what anyone's taking. Okay. So from these two studies, we got pretty darn similar results. In fact, almost identical. So we feel very confident about how Osolean works. We know that it helps to promote fat loss. There's no question. And again, I'll show you some information in a minute. And we know that it significantly decreases what's known as BMI, or body mass index. Now, I personally am not a believer in the body mass index. In fact, I have published my own study on body mass index and what I call body composition index. And so I'm in disagreement with BMI, but everyone uses BMI. So your doctor will be happy when your BMI changes. We can't expect everyone to know every study that's been published. Also know that it helps to reduce the circumference of your waist. And that's pretty important for a lot of people. In fact, for many people, that's their primary reason for going on a fat loss regime or diet and using fat loss products. Well, what we have in Osolean is not just ordinary whey. Now, every country has their rules about how a label has to be printed. It often confuses consumers, and it especially confuses consumers who are Manitech associates, because we're in 27 countries. And the labels differ greatly from one country to another, even in a product which is identical. And Osolean is identical in every country. There's no difference in the formula, yet the labels have to look different. Different words have to be selected to describe the materials. Those are laws in those various countries. So in most countries, what you're going to see is something on the label that says whey protein. Whey protein doesn't sound very exciting because, well, it isn't very exciting. But this is not just whey protein. This is the key for you. This is a peptide technology. Yes. Now you might say, all right, what's a peptide? Well, rather than getting into a very complicated explanation, let's do an example that you can understand and anyone you talk to will be able to understand. Now, this is a A basic example, it's not technical, okay, but you'll get the idea. Let's imagine that a protein is represented by a pearl necklace. Now, each of the pearls on the necklace would represent one peptide. And each of these peptides has different functions within the protein. If you want to take only certain peptides for only certain functions, what you want to do is literally carve around that protein. You want to remove those individual peptides and concentrate those peptides for specific function. So the label says whey protein. Okay. But really, it is a peptide technology. All right, let's talk about the technology. We used enzymes. Now, there have been different outfits who've used different kinds of chemicals. We don't want to use chemicals. So we used enzymes to literally carve out the peptides that we wanted from the protein to have certain activities. Those proteolytic enzymes, or enzymes that consume protein, are enzymes that we've used to create isolate peptide fractions. And that's the scientific term. So again, let's go back to my pearl necklace example. Think about removing a pearl here and a pearl there and leaving the rest of the necklace. That would be an isolate peptide fraction. All right, what do these do? Well, you can really think about Osolean in three areas of function, all extremely important, by the way. One thing that we want you to do that we know is healthy, but we also know it helps you maintain your body composition after you've been successful in losing body fat. In order to do that, you have to feed your body certain proteins, certain amino acids that help you to retain muscle. Now, if you use these same amino acids in huge amounts, it can help you to build muscle, but we didn't put huge amounts of these in this product. Our goal is for you to retain muscle mass. And I'll show you in just a moment what the scientific study told us about how successful this is. So we're looking at number one, using leucine, isoleucine, and valine. These three amino acids are called the branch chain amino acids. So these three amino acids help your body through protein synthesis to maintain as much muscle mass as you can while you're on your fat loss program. I want you to understand this. A lot of people think it's just about weight loss, and that's so wrong. It's totally wrong. So what they like to do is stand on the scale, and if they see a change in scale weight, oh, I'm successful. And if they don't see a change in scale weight, oh, I failed. That is totally the wrong way to look at this. When you are losing body fat, if you restrict your diet in any way, whether it's low cal, low carb, low glycemic, keto, whatever it is, if you restrict your diet in any way, your body first wants to eat your muscle because muscle is the most nutritious thing on your body. So eating your muscle mass gives more nutrition back to you so you can survive better the next day. Fat mass is the least nutritious mass on your body. So it doesn't want to burn the fat first, it wants to burn the fat last. So what we have to do is to make sure that we add these branch chain amino acids to the product to help you maintain your muscle mass. Function number two. This contains peptides that help your metabolism to convert stored body fat. And fat, by the way, is called adipose tissue. Okay, so if you see that in any writing, then you'll say, oh, what does that mean? It means fat. So function number one, help you to retain muscle mass. Function number two, peptides that help you to cause your metabolism to more efficiently convert stored body fat into energy. Function number three helps with satiation, or a different way to say it is, function number three helps you to feel more satisfied with smaller amounts of food. If you want to eat smaller amounts of food, that's going to help you in your total fat loss program. Now, it does this by sending a chemical signal from a small pocket that you have underneath your stomach. It's called the duodenum. When these glycomacropeptides get into the duodenum, they send a chemical signal to the brain. And that chemical signal says, you know what? I'm not as hungry as I was 20 minutes ago. This is why the instructions on this product say, take this product 20 minutes before eating. Now, if you forget to take it 20 minutes before eating, you will still get function number 1, that is to help you retain muscle mass, and function number 2, and that is to help metabolize stored body fat into energy. You'll still get those 2 functions, but you won't get the function that helps you feel full or satisfied unless you wait a full 20 minutes between the time you take the product and the time you sit down to eat. And that's why it says, take this 20 minutes before eating. All right, let's look a little bit about the science. And what you're seeing now is a bar graph. And the one on the left represents the original peptide product. I say original peptide product because that is Osolean, but Osolean has added to it one other very important key factor to make it even more functional and to make it unique to Manatech. So the original human double-blind placebo-controlled study, you have one group that receives the peptide technology, and you have one group that does not receive the peptide technology. Now, both groups do exactly the same thing. They maintain exactly the same diet. They each exercise only 30 minutes one day a week. So they're both doing exactly the same thing. But look at the control group. The control group is losing the same amount of fat as muscle. So muscle is represented here by the blue bar. You look at the peptide group. You have that same amount of muscle loss as in the control group, but your fat loss is about 75% higher than the muscle loss because we've helped to retain muscle mass with the product. And this product is effective in converting stored body fat into energy. Now let's look at this another way to reinforce this, because I know what always happens. This has happened when I was back in practice many years ago, and it's still happening today. People do not understand the difference between fat loss and weight loss. They don't understand the difference between having healthy body composition and unhealthy composition. So they think it's all about scale weight, and doctors think it's all about BMI, and it isn't. It's not. And that's why you're looking at this picture of 2 individuals, 2 men who are the same height and the same weight, but the 2 men are not in the same state of health. One man is a bodybuilder. He has only 5% body fat, and the rest of his total body is muscle and, of course, healthy bone and whatever fluids are in the body. Whereas the other man is what I call a couch potato. This is a man who does no physical activity. He's mostly fat with very little muscle. But understand, they both weigh exactly the same amount, and that means that both men you're looking at have the same BMI, body mass index. And that means that your doctor will, if he just sees the numbers and doesn't see the body, will say both of these men are equally unhealthy, which of course is false. So what do you need to do? You need to be focused as you use Osolean and you follow proper diet. You measure your changes in centimeters, and you do not measure yourself or weigh yourself daily. The change is gradual. Psychologically, you will make yourself fail if you're looking for daily changes. Literally, your weight will be different in the evening than it is in the morning, every day. This doesn't mean you've had a change in body fat. It means there's been a change in water weight. Water's very heavy. So what you want to do is retain muscle or even increase muscle through physical activity and lose fat. So this means that you can potentially gain weight on the scale, but lose centimeters of fat and look better and feel better and be healthier every day. So measure yourself with a tape measure, a Taylor's tape. Measure yourself. Make sure you measure yourself the same way exactly, in the same spot exactly, every week, once every 7 days. Better yet, to have a partner to do the measurements for you to make sure that you don't make a mistake when you're remeasuring yourself and then feel defeated if you didn't see the changes that you wanted to see. So then, make sure you have a healthy diet. You can do whatever you want, of course, when it comes to diet. My recommendation is always low glycemic or some variation of that. Don't worry about the complexity. Just stop consuming refined carbohydrates. That's very, very important. I'll show you a food pyramid in a moment. Make sure that you give your body whatever it needs in terms of supplements. Why is this important? You will be hungry for foods that contain certain nutrients if you're deficient in those nutrients. Sometimes your body's going to make you want to choose the wrong ones. Example, chocolate is delicious. It's not a weight loss food. It's not a fat loss food. But chocolate is high in magnesium and vitamin B. So if your body needs magnesium and you like chocolate, you might say, well, I sure need some chocolate. I've got a craving for some chocolate. So make sure that your body has the nutrition it needs. That means a proper multivitamin. And that means that you have all the other nutrients that you need as well. This can help to reduce your cravings for bad foods and help to reduce your appetite as well. Very, very important. All right, a couple of basic questions that I always get with Osolean. Got it from day one. So I'm going to address these because almost certainly you're going to get the same questions. First, people think that if they are sensitive to lactose, which is a sugar that naturally occurs in milk, that they are allergic to milk. This is not true. This is not the same thing. People, if they're allergic to milk, are allergic to a protein, which is called casein. They are not allergic to a sugar called lactose. Lactose sensitivity is fairly common among adults. And lactose sensitivity can give you all kinds of really unfortunate symptoms. I mean, lots of unfortunate symptoms. And that's why people think, oh my gosh, I'm allergic. Folks, an allergic reaction is very serious. And reactions to lactose, although unpleasant, are not all that serious. So what I want you to understand are some statistical realities here. If you're sensitive to lactose, and there are many people who are, according to the World Health Organization, who's done scientific experiments on lactose sensitivity, the amount of lactose in Osolean per serving, which is 0.336 milligrams. Yes, 0.336 milligrams, less, in fact, 1/3 of a milligram. That is less than 3% of what is required to give a lactose sensitivity reaction. So with this in mind, folks, the probability that anyone who is lactose intolerant will have a sensitivity reaction to Osolean is pretty slim, pretty unusual. Let's talk about casein. We go through a process, a triple filtration process, to try and purge all of the casein from the product. Now, because we can't guarantee 100%, if you know that you are allergic to casein, then don't use Osolean. Now, this is not about lactose, this is about casein. And if you suspect you're allergic to casein, but you don't know for sure, See a doctor who specializes in allergy testing and get tested and find out if you're allergic to casein. So what we've done is through this very, very careful triple filtration process, we have eliminated the casein to the point where we cannot detect it on our test devices. But once again, if you know you're allergic to casein, and this is not about lactose, it's casein, don't take this product. And if you think that you're having some sensitivity to any product at Manitech, please email it to safetymonitoring@manitech.com. Safety monitoring, one word, lowercase, @manitech.com. Please don't email to me. I get hundreds of emails. I can't keep up. So email to that department, because that's what I'll have to do if you email it to me. Last, there is a benefit that everyone talks about with this product above and beyond all the fat loss benefits that we talked about. And that is, each serving provides 450 milligrams of food form calcium. Now that's very, very important for you if you are deficient in calcium. According to the scientific test data, around 40% of people are deficient in calcium and around 60% are not. So if you're deficient, you definitely want this calcium. If you're not deficient, you want to make sure that you're taking your supplements of magnesium and vitamin D. Okay? But this is a lot of food form calcium. And last, we're going to look at the food pyramid to kind of put the diet thing in perspective for you. Now, every country has their own way of making a recommendation of food. And for many years, America was using a food pyramid. Well, you're looking right now at the American food pyramid, which is completely, totally, absolutely wrong if you want to lose body fat. It's really good if you want to have too much body fat and you want to have blood sugar problems the rest of your life, then that's just the right pyramid to follow. So let's take a look at my pyramid. You'll see at the base of the pyramid, that means the majority of what you should eat every day is going to be mostly vegetables. That's the biggest portion of food that you should eat every day is vegetables. Second, some fruit. Now you move up one level on the pyramid and what you now see is dairy, which provides tremendous levels of protein and other nutrition, and meats, which provide you with the highest level of proteins of anything that you can consume. Above that, you have nutritional oils, and above that, the smallest portion of what you should eat every day, exactly the opposite of what every government tells you to do, is whole grains or low glycemic grain products. Now, what everybody does on the planet, especially people who have too much body fat, is they are consuming the wrong foods. They've got their pyramid upside down. And what they eat mostly is grain products. So that means things that you can make bread out of and muffins and that sort of thing. Okay. So that's what you should eat the least of. Now, if you consume a grain product, that grain product needs to be very difficult to digest. I know that sounds counterintuitive too. But the more quickly you convert a grain product into blood sugar, the more likely you are to trigger an insulin response. And that means what you've just eaten will be stored as body fat. You don't want to store it. You want to metabolize it. So that's, people usually say burn fat. Well, you don't actually burn it, but you convert the stored fat into energy. That's what you want to do. You will not do that if you're spiking your insulin all the time. You just won't do it. So choose your foods wisely. Have activity. And I know everybody hates the word exercise. If you have physical activity, that can be walking, it can be playing tennis, it can be swimming, it can be cycling. Be active, be physically active. This will help you succeed. That's what you want to do. So once again, we'll go back to the beginning. Osolean is not just a container full of whey protein. It has protein peptide isolates that have specific functions. these specific functions. Number one, to help you maintain muscle mass. Number two, to help convert stored body fat into energy. And number three, if you take the product 20 minutes before you eat, to help reduce your appetite. Osolean is a product that can be a tremendous addition to your personal fat loss program. Thanks for listening, my friends.